Concussions are common injuries in sports. Since these injuries are so common, it's important that we understand the risks and how to treat them. It's also important that we know whether or not multiple concussions can impact an adolescent's developing brain. Traumatic brain injuries or mild traumatic brain injuries are caused by a blow to the head or body resulting in rapid movement of the brain within the skull, shaking, twisting, or back and forth movement.
Visible clues of the presence of a mild traumatic brain injury include a dazed or vacant look, loss of awareness or lying motionless, confusion, grabbing or shaking of the head, and more. Symptoms following a concussion could show right away or within the first 24 to 48 hours, include headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, slow responses, nauseousness, sensitivity to light, poor memory, and concentration.
If parents, athletes, coaches, and trainers are provided with the proper knowledge of how to follow protocols and are made aware of the possible negative impacts of concussions, athletes will have a better chance of returning to sport without a negative impact on their further development, and a greater importance will be placed on following these suggestive protocols. Turner, Lucas, Margoz, and Cornell in their 2017 article found that more than half of the study population of parents and guardians of young athletes had little to no knowledge or understanding of return to play protocol, and this did not help athletes return to play any safer. Another example is that from the Yard and Comstock 2009 article, where they found that approximately half the student athletes out of a sample population did not follow these suggested protocols, which in turn could have possibly led to greater rates of repeat concussions and negative impacts on their future development.
Even when parents and athletes are educated, athletes still don't always admit to having symptoms because they want to continue to play. These athletes typically wait to report symptoms till their removal is less likely to affect the game or their team's chances of making it out of the way. These athletes wait until the pain becomes unbearable before reporting. Askin et al. Found that 30% to 50% of athletes still don't report concussion symptoms for fear of being removed from the game. In doing so, this choice leads to a longer recovery time by approximately 5 days or longer in the absolute worst case. Askin et al. Also discusses the notion of a window of vulnerability. This encompasses the period after concussion wherein continued activity and stimulation could impair or prolong neurobehavioral recovery.
Following the recommended protocols from a moment a concussion is suspected will aid in a safe return for the athlete. Taking the recommended time away from activities that put stress on the body will only benefit them and help them in a better recovery. Following the return to play protocols such as resting until symptom-free will only ensure an athlete has lesser chance of second impact syndrome or re-injury. There's not just one recommended amount of time that an athlete should rest because each person is different and will recover differently. A child may take longer to recover than an adult. But most importantly, individuals must follow the recommended rest times to maximize their chances of returning with a smaller chance of neurocognitive deficits. Following general protocols that Civica and Prideaux listed, such as resting, avoiding activity that increase symptoms, taking breaks during the day, and limiting activity that require a lot of mental concentration, will ensure that an athlete can return to sport without the negative impacts that concussions have on a developing person.
Valavich's article suggests that some long-term effects of concussions include trouble concentrating, early fatigue when engaging in mental and physical activities, memory problems, personality change, lower self-reported health-related quality of life in terms of mental health, depression, and other psychological problems. Although many protocols are put into place to minimize the effects of concussions, those athletes that do not report and continue to play are always at risk for receiving a second blow to the head or impact that causes another concussion on top of the first one already received. This is known as second impact syndrome. This causes massive swelling in the brain, and in severe cases, the brain is squeezed through small holes within the skull, known as herniation. This can lead to decreased blood flow to the brain and ultimately to the death of the athlete. The first 15 seconds to 1 or 2 minutes, the athlete may not be aware of the second concussion they just received. They usually remain on their feet but a little dazed. Often, the affected athlete will walk off the playing field or remain playing at their own will. However, seconds to minutes after the impact, the aware but stunned athlete will collapse with rapidly dilating pupils, loss of eye movement, and will stop breathing. Although SIS is rare, it is more common in more aggressive sports such as football or rugby. This was all found in Stratus's 2015 article online.
We can see that more and more people are seeing the importance of following these protocols and that there are many leagues that are implementing rules and policies promoting education. The importance of education and knowledge of these protocols is shown through Podaki, Cole, and Ahmed's 2016 study, where they studied the impact of the implementation of the new NBA concussion policy and found that after the policy was implemented, there would be fewer same-game returns and less repeat concussions. Similarly, Jeffords discussed in his 2018 article how Ontario would pass new legislation, Rowan's Law. Both the implementation of the NBA concussion policy and Rowan's Law would promote the safety of the athlete and the education of how to deal with a concussion properly and how it could affect the athlete. Concussions are very dangerous and can result in negative impacts on development. The implementation of these new rules aims to promote athletes, coaches, trainers, and parents to follow these protocols to reduce chances of negative impact of multiple concussions and possibly save an athlete's life.
Protocols are an important thing to stress in every sport and within every team. It is important that we continually stress the importance of the health of the individual athlete above anything. Athletes need to know that concussions can be very fatal to their development and possibly life-threatening. In October 2001, the International Hockey Federation, along with the International Olympic Committee and the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, met in Vienna to discuss and evaluate the current status of concussion management guidelines and draft practical recommendations for making return-to-play decisions. They concluded that the athlete must go through careful evaluation following a suspected concussion. Although protocols are put into place to help the individual, they are useless if the athlete feels that the game is more important than themselves.
Hawkins' 2016 article mentioned that every year 300,000 high school student athletes would sustain a concussion. This number would increase by 16% since the year 1998. If we implement heavier and more detailed protocols, this number has the chance to decrease with those who are diagnosed knowing how to deal with the injuries, resulting in fewer repeat injuries and safer returns for the athletes.
Even with the implementation of stronger protocols, concussions can still happen to any student athlete. Overall, the more concussions you get, the more likely you are to suffer long-term consequences, especially if the brain is not given enough time to recover. Hawkins stated, "We're starting to learn that perhaps these seemingly minor blows to the head, when they are cumulative, can lead to depression and behavior change. In fact, we think that some suicides may be linked to the brain damage that results from multiple concussions. Taking into account everything we know about concussions, it is important not only to have better and more effective protocols, but to have better and more efficient means of reaching the student athlete and getting them to understand that life is about more than just the game."